again. Today I'm going to talk about the new George Miller film, 3,000 Years of Longing, starring Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton. It's advertised as starring Tilda Swinton, but it really stars Idris Elba. He's kind of in a lot more than she is, and his dramatic arc is kind of power in the film. But she's a bigger movie star name. But it's kind of that weird thing is like the person who's advertised as the star kind of maybe isn't as much. It's the same way George Miller did the Fury Road, where the advertised star was Tom Hardy as Mad Max, but the actual dramatic thrust came from Furiosa, played by Charlize Theron. It's the same thing here, where the advertised star really is the lead supporting part, which is a structure I really like, because it means you get shifted in your point of view quite easily. Like, because the film can start out with what you think is a central character, and then you realise that's a very important character, but it's not the character. But that's your host for the story. So, this one is about the genie, the myth from ancient times in the Muslim world of the jinn, or the genie, as we call it in the West. We bastardise it for Aladdin stories and stuff like that, and the Disney films and things, and I think it means things that are different in the Muslim world than it does in the West's interpretation of it. There's always going to be things where you take a myth from somebody else's culture and you adjust it slightly, or even adjusting something from the far past. Like the myth of Robin Hood is very different now than it was in the past. The myth of King Arthur is very different now than it was in the past. You know, we change things as we go. We interpret them through what our culture is at the time. So this is taking what we view as that myth of the genie with the three wishes, but it is a case of the person who's interpreting the story is from the West, and the person who's telling the story is from the East. So it's two cultures coming together and finding that neither of them is actually the superior. They're both equally damaged in lots of ways. And it is a beautiful film. It's a wonderful film. It's one of the best films I've seen this year. It really is gorgeous. And of course it bombed and no one cared. It's very similar in the reception to Crimes of the Future, the Cronenberg film that came out and nobody cared. It was like, this is one of the best films of the year, but nobody cares. You know. But this one was actually dumped. It cost a lot of money and it was dumped. And George Miller was already on to the Furiosa film. So I don't think it's one of those ones I'm glad it was made. And I know in the future it's one of those films that will probably come up a lot more in the future. As like, this should have been appreciated more when it came out. But it was this film he made after Fury Road's big success, just to... it was popular again, he'd get this film made he wanted to make that might not have been the easiest sell. So it's based on a novella by Ace Byatt, and it's literally is about this woman who's a middle-aged woman who lives by herself, who had a marriage that didn't work out, and now she's a scholar in the art of storytelling, what stories mean from myths and culture to culture, and what the different meanings are over time. And she's someone who loves stories, the way a lot of people who are into films and books love the stories, like more than the average person. I'm like that, so I know it's very easy for me to identify this character because it's like I'm very similar to that. But it is the kind of thing of if you're that way, you will sacrifice certain things, certain relationships, and you have certain inabilities with people that will manifest itself through time. And at this point in her life, she's starting to see these things. She's an active imagination, starting to see things, and she's that thing when she's going mad. She goes because she's going to. I think it's Turkey. She's going to do a talk, and while she's there, she goes to a shop just to buy a little knick-knack for a tourist thing. Like, I'll buy some of them here as a memory of being there. So she buys this thing, this little ornament that's at the bottom of a pile somewhere, and it's almost like the guy who's selling it's trying to say, "Don't you want something better? This is dirty and old. She's not like this. I'll take this." So she takes it home and tries to clean up a little bit, and then opens the top up, and inside's a genie played by Idris Elba, and he offers her 3 wishes. And of course, because she's a scholar, she says every wish, every story like this, the wishes turn out to be wrong because the person giving the wish is a trickster. They never work out well for anybody. This is going to be a complete embarrassment. It's going to ruin my life. I'm not doing the wishes. And of course, it's a problem for the genie or the jinn who needs to have to do the 3 wishes so that he can move on to the afterlife, because he cannot actually move on until someone has 3 successful wishes. And she's not going to do the wishes. And so her thing is to him is like, okay, you tell me your story. And that's when you get into the crux of the story, because it's really about the story of the jinn, who's actually went through a lot over time. And it becomes a story about the different variations of wishes and the variations of lives in the past, coming to the present, and how human beings have moved on but still essentially the same. We're still the same drives we've always had. We're essentially as stupid as we've always been. You know. So that's kind of the focus of the story is the flaws of human beings who are doing the wishes. And the focus of the thing is the Idris Elba character is not a trickster. He's just having to deal with human beings and all their flaws and all of their frustrating, ways of being. Their short-sightedness, their tragedies, how things can evolve in the way they think that actually can damn them, even though people try to help them. It's just about the different flaws in people, which he observes over time, and how people can be callous with what they supposedly love because they have other ambitions. So it starts off way in the past where he was in love with a woman, and it's all about like ancient myth and how he's damned by her new lover to be the gene in this lamp as a way to get rid of him. And he's thrown in the sea in his lamp and has to survive for thousands of years. And he can't sleep, and he has to try and retain his sanity and somehow. So even when he actually comes out of that situation, he has to... I'm trying to be vague about all the stories. Because it's a new film, I'm trying to be vague. And how that story develops of him getting out. He has to try and give 3 wishes to this young woman. And it all goes wrong. And how he constantly getting trapped in this thing because no one gets the 3 wishes finally that will free him. And there's a whole variation of why people do not get these 3 wishes. There's a whole different ways of being. And it's all about different ways of storytelling as well, about how different outcomes emerge through different people's character and how people's character actually causes their fate to occur. Whether they're blind to the realities around them, whether they're blind to their own flaws, or whether they're blind to, just reality. Which is the Tilda Swinton's character. She's blind to the commitment to a choice. Like, she thinks she's so distant from things. So she thinks because she's an expert in stories, she can see everything. But she's not wholeheartedly moving into any experience, and that's her flaw. But it's more complicated than that. There's actually, there's reasons for why she is the way she is. There's reasons why the Elba character has developed the way he is as well. So it's not just about simplistic motivations. It's about the complications of experience, the complications of life, and how they evolve. I mean, there's a tragic story of this little boy and how he evolves during his life. That's wonderful. There's a story about a young woman who is very intelligent, and how that's her undoing, really. And that's undoing of the Jinn as well, because of how things evolve with her. And it's about how different cultures oppress you, and how different cultures can seem more modern, but they've got their problems. And basically, the idea is how actual, just simple kindness can actually do a lot for people. So it is a sweet film, but it's also not ignorant of the flaws in people and the horrific things that happen in history and the horrific actions we can take as human beings. It's not ignorant of that, like, at all. It's very clear. But it is a film about the choices you make as seen through the metaphor of a story. And either you're too far into your own situation, or you might be too far distant from your situation, or you might be in the middle, but you can't see with clarity what is good for you. So, or you misunderstand something and say something thoughtlessly, and it just causes havoc. So it's a wonderful thing about storytelling as a metaphor for different lives, because lives are the thing to make up stories ultimately, and we like stories because we like to hear about other people's lives and what happened with them, and how nowadays a lot of stories have been devolved because they become fantasy epics of idealized characters who are not exactly tied to reality and tied to the flaws that we all have as people, and how that becomes this like superhero narrative which has always existed in different guises, but how that kind of distances you from like human touch and human emotion and understanding of where you are in your life. So it's a wonderful film, very deep. There's been a few complainers talking about race things, like, oh, it's an old trope and a Western woman and this image of the East, and he's subjugated to her. But the whole film is about the fact that they're both imprisoned in their own way, you know, and it's not about any of that situation. It's about how do you culture understand the other, and how do you actually get over yourself and try and figure a common ground with people, and how we're so quick to develop tribes even within our own tribes, and how that's not healthy, and how a much more tolerant version of the future is needed, how you have to try and evolve and learn with people and try and see their point of view. So this is a beautiful film. I don't want to go any further about it because you should see it. I've tried to remain as vague as I can about the actual stories and about some of the myths they're actually related to, because they do tie to certain myths, and other times there's smaller stories that aren't. But because it's like sometimes it's the highest of the high, and sometimes it's the smallest person they're talking about. It's a whole variations of humanity that are shown in this film. So this is a wonderful film, one of George Miller's best films. It can get completely killed commercially because it was barely released, and critically it's got the backlash of, oh, it's not Fury Road. It's the exact opposite you could possibly be from Fury Road, and I think people just didn't get it. It's just one of those films that it came and went, and it's a shame because it is a beautiful film. So I'd highly recommend seeing this film. It is wonderful, and it is a beautiful film. So it reminded me a lot of The Archers, with Michael Pell and Emmett Pressburger, the stories within stories and what the stories mean, and how life can be a tragedy, can be beautiful at the same time, and all the kind of conflicting emotions of those Archers films kind of comes through this film as well. It's very inspired by that kind of thing. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it makes you want to go see this film because it is really worth seeing. So that's me for now. Right, bye.